Okay, let's get going here. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. We got quite a collection of academians here today.
Yeah, we have a good diversity here today. Should be interesting. Okay, we're going to get started here, and everything that was we talked about previously. Just so you know, a heads up. Anything before the official start of the meeting doesn't get recorded, even though it says recording. I edited it out. Okay, and we have Darren with us. He was with us. He's back with us.
Irving was with us.
He was
It
with
looks
us.
like it's dark where he is.
They don't have darkness in New Orleans. Morning, Darren.
Morning.
Where are you today?
Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Okay, very good. Okay, let's get going here. We've got 2 or 3 really good topics. I don't know how far we'll get. And we have a very diverse group today, so I'm sure there'll be a diversity of opinion. And I guess the first question is, well, do you want me to just list the general question or topic, or do you want me to specify? How many of you have the current list?
I've got it.
Okay. Should I mention the subtopics, or do we just want to go with the main topic and see what happens?
Either
one. I'm okay with whatever decision is being made.
Chris or Darren, any thoughts?
I go with the flow, so that's fine.
Same here.
Yeah, let's go with the flow. That's a good attitude. So we'll just start with the general topic and see where it goes. And if there's something important that I think has been missed, I'll bring it up. If you are teaching your martial art to others, what has teaching taught you? Anybody want to dig into that?
yeah, really. What has it not taught us? Everything.
Okay.
I would say probably the most obvious thing for me, excuse me, was how different people have different learning styles. And I have to adjust how I teach for the individual. Some need to hear it, some need to see it, some need to feel it. And it really makes a big difference. And in a large group, that's tricky. Because I have to do, and really I end up doing all 3 because I know I've got all 3 learning styles in my group.
Okay. Has it and so you're saying essentially that you can't just teach one way.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I know all of us probably have different teaching styles. And but what is it? Has it made you a better person, or has teaching made you a better martial artist, or?
Well, there's learning styles and there's teaching styles. And in my opinion, excellent teachers adapt their teaching style to accommodate learning styles so that you better reach the students. And that's done on the fly as you realize as students teach you how they learn.
Okay. Yeah, I've learned a lot from my students on how to do a better job of teaching. And I say that not only as a martial arts sensei, but as a classroom teacher.
Mm-hmm.
You learn a lot by doing if you are open to feedback.
Mm-hmm. One of the strengths of teaching is it's learning on steroids. You have to crystallize your thoughts so that they can be presented accurately and well, creatively, in a most interesting possible way to attract students to the learning process, like moths to the light. And that's done if you're creative. If a creative teacher, you inspire naturally because you eschew the conventional ways of teaching. You're constantly looking for a right way to present material, and you never stop seeking the right ways to present material.
Yeah, I think it's a constant process of realizing that you could have done something better,
Always.
and you're more willing to try different ways of teaching something, and as I think we've touched on, you don't really learn anything until you have to teach it to someone else. Doesn't matter whether it's a martial art or how to blow your nose. Uh, so anyway, so and also when you start teaching, you start finding all of your own mistakes, which is hard for some people to accept.
Yeah, sure, Sensei. I think it's about everything, right? It's not only about the student, it's about the teacher as well. I all the time find out ways of doing things better or correcting myself and different things that maybe I started to instruct, and the individual that I'm working with didn't understand it, but the reason why they didn't understand it is maybe because of the way that I presented it and a better way of approaching that, and not only making them better, but making myself better at it. And that includes applying technique or a philosophy or anything that's about whatever you're presenting in the middle of a class. So not only improving students, but improving myself as well throughout the process.
Darren, I couldn't agree more. You're spot on when you say that. What happens when we teach is that we refine our own techniques as we refine presentation of material. And for that, we owe our students a debt of gratitude, because without them, those refinements won't take place.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to the fact that, I think every one of us has said it at some point in time in some sort of way in their own mind. But for me, it's about, thinking you've achieved a Dan level, meaning, at this point, let's just say first Dan, and realizing the fact that I'm just starting to learn.
I will say that this morning I shared with my lovely bride the topics, and I said, this is a meeting where I'm going to run my mouth a lot because this is one of my favorite topics head on. And my bride's response was very quick and immediate. She said, "Oh, Lord, help them."
Word what?
Oh, Lord, help them. She keeps me humble.
One of the things I've learned, I've been teaching in the Bay Area and I've moved to Sacramento, is that different people have different language skills. And one of the most important things I've learned is that when we're trying to describe what we do, people of different orientations or ancestries have different meanings when you say something to them. So we have to learn to use different vocabulary. One of the things I learned that very simple, when you say duck, we in the martial arts world will duck. Other people will say, where is the duck? So we have to be careful about what we say. And I learned this early on when my son actually was filling in on a class for me. And he said, "Dad, you can't say that to these kids because they don't understand what you're talking about. Explain it this way." He started when he was like 6 years old. So he learned a different type of vocabulary to talk to kids. I started when I was 42 years old. So I never learned the kids' language. And I found that the language of different cultures have different meanings and they don't always quite understand what you're trying to explain to them verbally.
Yeah, you do have to be in tune with, how do you say, the vocabulary of the generation or the vocabulary of your students. because sometimes you can get caught, as far as they're concerned, speaking a different language. Like one of the things when I started teaching in the junior high school, I was trying to get kids to squat down more for what do you call it? For hip throws. Because they were just bending over. And I said, no, you gotta get your hip below their hip. And I said, then I had two brain cells connected, and I said, how many of you have been camping? And several of them raised their hands. I said, and when you go to the bathroom, what do you do? And they said, well, we squat down. So we came up with the term camp squat, which became part of the class vocabulary, that you squat down to get below their hip, and that solved the problem. And so sometimes you will end up creating. You'll find out what they understand, and you have to use their terminology so that they understand what you want. And that's I think that's one of the realities. You just it's like going to a foreign country. When you travel, there are Chris going to Japan, there are certain phrases he may have learned to use them previously, but if he was I don't know if Chris, if you were in a tour group or not, but they do usually tell you these are some phrases you use if you need help or to get directions, and they help you learn them so that if you need to, one very important one was after saying hello and a couple other gracious phrases, do you speak English? And that's for English speaking people, that's a critical question. So you have to learn, if you're going somewhere, you have to learn at least a couple of basic phrases for your own survival. And as a teacher, you have to do that too, because you want your kids to succeed. So yeah, the vocabulary you use is important. Okay, has teaching made you a better person, or is that?
I can jump on this one big time because
I have to leave.
Okay,
I want to introduce myself, and I hope to see you at the next meeting.
okay.
Please keep me on the list, George. Thank you.
Oh yes.
Thank you. Nice to meet you here today.
You're on the list until someplace freezes over.
Thank you.
Okay. So has it made you a better person? Teaching martial arts, has it made you a better person?
Teaching all the way around, I think, it can't help but make you a better person in so many ways. You become a better communicator because teaching is all about communication. I would not have written the 2 books on piano and the 4 books on self-defense that I've written if I had not wanted to teach, if I didn't teach, because I would have no reason to write them other than pure selfishness. And the selfishness was the initial catalyst for writing, but it quickly evolved into, wow, I can speed up the rate at which my students learn if I put these ideas down in book form and then make these books available at cost so that they can use them to their advantage. One of the books is online, so they don't have an excuse for not getting a hold of the book. They can just go on a website on their phone, so they can study jujitsu standing in line at a movie theater. No excuses. Anyways, in process of writing those, I also had to do extra crystallization of thinking. And I will say that when you write, you are solitary. you must go inside yourself, and you must not seek escape, because you will be. It's just you and that keyboard, and there'll be times when you feel like slashing your wrists if you dislike writing the way I do. But anyways, you have to be willing to do that to write. Otherwise, you won't.
No, it is important, and it's also important to with the various editors I had at Black Belt, because I have some writing idiosyncrasies. If I'm writing away, I'll repeat words, I'll repeat entire sentences, I'll repeat entire paragraphs, complete with spelling and grammatical errors, identical. So it's something I conscientiously look out for. But I've also had editors that say, I'll put down a phrase and they'll say, can you explain this? Because if we're writing, we tend to sometimes assume the other person knows what we're talking about. And they don't. And it's sort of like teaching. We assume many times that the student knows what we're talking about. Well, they're purple belt, fourth Q, they should know this. Or they're black belt, they should know this. And lo and beholden, they don't know that.
I think it was Einstein that said, if you can't explain a topic to a 6-year-old, you don't know it. Kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying.
Yeah. So,
the other thing that goes hand in hand with what you're saying is, before it gets to an editor, hopefully you've had a number of people proofread whatever you've written, because nobody writes anything without a proofreader, and preferably multiple proofreaders.
Yeah, yes. One thing I learned earlier on was I would write something, put it down, and then come back to it 3 or 4 weeks later and reread it, find all my mistakes. Or even spelling errors, I think the biggest criticism I got from editors was that I do run on sentences beautifully. I think part of that's because I can't get past a verb and a noun when it comes to breaking down a sentence, which killed me in foreign languages. But anyway, let's move on here. Have any of you earned a black belt in any other martial art other than that which you are teaching?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Or do you have a core martial art, and have you picked up a black belt in other martial arts?
Yes. I have one in China karate, but my primary is jujitsu. Actually, the more I taught jujitsu, the less I wanted to teach karate.
Okay.
It just wasn't practical as a self-defense tool.
Any other experiences?
Tom, like you, I've got my first black belt I earned was in karate. And it became apparent to me that if I was ever going to use it, I would probably also be finding myself out in court.
Yeah.
What drew me to jiu-jitsu was the fact that you could readily make the defense against aggression equal to the aggression. And so, like you, traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu is my primary black belt. It's where I've chosen to excel. And so I've remained shodan at karate, but advanced through the ranks in traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, because that's where my primary interest lies. It's definitely a more comprehensive form of self-defense, which makes it better for self-defense, in my opinion. It's not just a martial art. It's by being as comprehensive as it is, it's a solid self-defense form.
Okay. And I will agree. My only background has been with under Seki, and then I heard about Harold Brocious and Katsugo Jujitsu, and I studied that. I did not earn any belts with Al. He knew why I was there. I was upfront with him. I said, I sense there are some blank spots in what Seki is teaching, and I think your style of jujitsu will fill in those blank spots. And it did fill in some of the blank spots. He had a different approach to teaching. For those of you that are as old as I am, not old, as experienced as I am,
Thank you for correcting that, Sensei.
you might be familiar with the name Buddy Hackett.
Oh, yeah.
And Hal was a Buddy Hackett on the mat, off the mat. He had a really good sense of humor, very dry, but he made the point. And
Sensei, you speak of him in the past tense. He's still with us, isn't he?
Hal, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, he puts out David Bellman puts out a weekly newsletter called, what it's called. And usually Hal has one or two techniques in it. Hal is a very straight up person. But I think he either worked for the Boston or Chicago Police Department, one of the two. And that's where he learned a lot of his, pardon the pun, tricks of the trade. And a lot of his self-defense stuff simply is not nice, but it works beautifully. And you look at it and you say, his stuff is not arty or anything like that, but it works. You just have to, just because it looks good doesn't mean it works. But
other than Jiu-Jitsu, I have learned the martial arts Taekwondo, got my second degree. I'm currently working on my third degree. Got my degree from Mr. Jun Ree many years ago. Currently, I'm doing both Taekwondo, the Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
Just for your information.
okay. Anybody else have any other belts floating around? They want to.
I've got a question for you, Carlos. With your Taekwondo, are you? There are two main ways I've seen that presented. Taekwondo is hand, foot, way, and what I've seen, even at 5th and 8th degree black belt testings, is a huge percentage of foot kicking techniques and almost no hand techniques. Is yours balanced hand and foot, or mostly foot?
Very, very interesting question. And I think it has to do with the concept that we are discussing today about whether martial art have taught you something special, unique, the passion of teaching, getting along with students, peers, and all above. I wanted to be direct in terms of my own individual experience throughout the years. I mentioned it before that I have had the privilege to train with many, many martial artists. And with Taekwondo, you use both. You use the defensive and offensive technique, hands and feet. You can develop your own style at some point of time, which I have, blending multiple techniques that I have learned throughout the years, workshop that I have attended. And it all depends in the situation that you are, when you are sparring. For example, speaking about Taekwondo, I have learned the sparring protocol, but I have also learned the Olympic style Taekwondo, which is more, I would say, more brutal. I mean, if you have seen the Olympics in the past, you know what I mean. If you got to be on top shape. I learned the Olympic Taekwondo in 6 months, pretty much incorporate some of the techniques that I already have. I love the Olympic Taekwondo. It's very effective, very unique. Up to now, it all depends when you are working out with the students or your peers, what works best for you. There are times where I have only used. I remember one time I attended a tournament. I have a sore wrist. I was hardly able to punch, and vice versa. Sorry, I have an injury on my one of my foot. So throughout the course of the tournament, I used 98% of my hands because of the injury that I have on one of my feet. Playing soccer, I think I sprained my ankle. Hey, and I tell you, I was very surprised. I came to second place in that tournament just by using my hands.
It's an interesting answer. What I've experienced myself studying Taekwondo through years of study is a 50-50 blend. But my sensei was also had a boxing background with a record of 35-2 in the ring himself. And so it was a beautiful blend. And I just assumed that all Taekwondo was taught that way. When I've been to 5th, 6th, 8th degree black belt testings, I have seen exactly the opposite of what you just did with your hands. I see 90+%, 98% would not be inaccurate. Feet, and only a couple of hand techniques in the 3-hour testing. And it was, I don't know, I was dismayed. I went away disgruntled, and yeah, I thought it was very disingenuous of them to present that, especially.
Hey, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Dave, as a Latino, I love boxing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's being an advantage, to be able to incorporate my boxing technique, especially, watching Stone Hands, Mano de Piedras from Panama. That's where I'm from. I'm Panamanian. So I love all his fights. So I learned from him too.
I didn't mean to get off topic this far. I just was curious your experience with that.
Okay, let's try to get back on topic. Do another question in the same area? Do you teach? How many of you teach the same way your sensei taught you? Now I'm putting you on the spot.
Not here. Guilty.
Some aspects, but it really goes back to the first question, right, is what we've learned from teaching. What I've learned is, teaching makes you stop and think about what you're doing. Especially like in my case, I've been doing this since I can walk. And so a lot of things feel natural and second nature, but you don't really think about the mechanics. It's kind of like walking and talking at the same time or using your hands to write. You're not thinking about every single movement. So sometimes when you teach, you just show it, the way, as an example, yesterday I was training with my instructor, and he'll show something and it's 100 miles an hour, so, and then, if you miss the middle part, which is most of it, you're kind of expected to explore and connect the dots yourself. And then he'll just guide you if you're way off or you've connected them really, really wrong. So that comes from a time and a culture where it's a very homogenous society, so if you're going to do something, most people kind of behave the same way. I would even venture to say kind of think very similarly. So teaching a group like that a certain way, you achieve a good amount of success. But you try to teach that way to a culture like ours, which is probably the most, diverse, both from a background and age group, when you think about it, right? Because, I mean, my classes, we have people as young as 5 or 6, and we have people in their 80s, almost 90s. So not all at the same time, in the same place. But if I try to teach the same way my senseis have taught me every time, to that type of group, it's not going to work. In some areas, it's going to fail miserably. So no, for the most part, I teach very differently, but certain aspects of the teaching, depending on like if I'm with my black belts or something, then I will teach more his way. But I have a reason for that too. It's not that way is better. It's because I have him over a few times a year to train. And so I want my students to be familiar with his teaching method. Otherwise, there'll be a big disconnect. Another example is this: he'll ask you to do something, and maybe it's directional, right? And you do it, and it'll say no. So then you turn to do it in another direction, and it's no. Well, pretty soon you've gone 360, and it's all no. Well, which is it? And then he'll show you, and then you're thinking, but I did that. I went that way. Well, yeah, you did, but you didn't do it you didn't do it first. Like you did it by, changing direction until you hit the right one. So it could be very frustrating and confusing. At this point in my life, it's amusing. I have fun with it, but for the average person, it's like, they're so frustrated and flustered at that point, that they don't understand. But that's a language barrier too. It's a very different way, of thinking and processing. So yeah, as a teacher, one size does not fit all. I mean, it never really did. The reason it worked in some cultures is because the culture was designed kind of a one size thing. And I'll just finish with this is, if you do travel to places like Japan sometimes and you're trying to buy a t-shirt or something, they don't have the diversity of sizes we do because they're all built similarly for the most part. So you either fit into that mold, or you don't. And we can't do that here, if we want to really help people and be successful in how we communicate. But teaching absolutely makes you think about each step. What did I do first? What did I do second? And I think that does help, when you need to break down the instructions that way. Kind of like teaching the alphabet and how to put the words together after that and the sentences and things like that. And Sensei, since I'm talking already, on the belt stuff, I have several. I had to kind of look it up because the way I teach, I think everybody knows by now, is different. So I don't teach under those categories necessarily. My curriculum kind of has all the elements, and it's just because of kind of where I'm at. I've just realized everything is pretty much very similar from a science, perspective, physics perspective. So for me, I alternate from week to week. So one week we focus on striking, another week we focus on grappling. Whether that striking stuff comes from, karate, boxing, taekwondo, whatever it is, it comes from that. And I blend it in. And on the grappling stuff, Aikido, Jujitsu, Hapkido, everything is kind of comes into that. As far as ranking, that's where it gets tricky, right? Because some of these arts have specific forms that go with it. And if you're part of an organization, then they have a standard set of, things. I do that too. So I issue standard either karate or jujitsu type of ranking. And then if they want to be ranked in Hapkido or Taekwondo or, like other types of things like that, that I don't specifically categorize, I do have affiliations, with those organizations, and I can get them ranked. So I just have them test under that particular curriculum, but they already know it. So I don't have to teach them anything new, unless it's like a form, that needs to be done, a kata or something like that. So that's a lot, but there you go.
Seki, no, I do not teach like Seki taught. He explained very little. His most often used phrase was, "Watch what I do." And that's how he taught.
Yeah.
And the problem was that most of the time you didn't know what to watch. Once you had to figure out what to watch to find out how the technique worked. And I found early on that many of my students would concentrate on what my hands and arms were doing. And I'd say, you have to watch my feet. Where are my feet? Probably one of the best examples would be, you can take a Koshinagi, basic hip throw. And students would come in, they end up with both of their feet outside of their attacker's feet. And, and once I watched Seki's feet to see where he was, it allowed him to remain balanced. And so one of the things that I've always said to students, I'll say, if you don't feel balanced, move your feet until you feel balanced. And that's a concept regardless of technique. And also, if you're executing a technique such as Teinagi or Kotegaish, hand throw, if you're doing it with his right hand, you have to pivot your left foot back as you're doing the throw, simply for the momentum's sake and to maintain your balance. And those are hard things to pick up on, especially there are some sensei who still teach jujitsu wearing a hakama.
Yeah.
And in Aikido, this is, you wear hakama, and if you can't see it, it's beautiful to watch techniques done by a person in a hakama, because it looks like they're floating basically, because you can't see where their feet are going. If you ever saw the movie Mars Attacks, which is a horribly bad movie, the Martians, it looked like they were just floating around on the ground. If you haven't seen Aikido people train or the movie, you have no idea what's going on. But that was one reason why Seki, he said, I'm not going to wear an hakama, I'm going to wear judo pants, because you need to see what my feet are doing. And that's something a lot of students miss doing until they're told, watch my feet. Whether it be taekwondo or judo or aikido or jujitsu or hapkido, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, walking down the street, your feet have to be in certain places to maintain your balance.
Sensei, when I look at the amount of experience each one of these people I'm looking at has, and mix that with the experience, with the creativity that each one of you have demonstrated, I would say that teaching creatively would come naturally, and to expound upon what they've been taught and the way they've been taught would be a natural consequence of a mixture of experience and natural creativity. And so that goes straight to what you're asking. Do you teach the way you were taught? And I would say that yes, perhaps as much as 10% to grab a number, but the remaining 90% is developed along the way through the experience of teaching and also the creativity. I wanted to show you something in this book. This is a book Balance. Let me see if I can get it to focus here. My camera doesn't want to focus on it. Well, it almost got it. Anyways, there's a balance on the front of this thing. One of the many types of balance we have in our universe. I want to show you something about teachers. And again, can I get this to focus? My camera doesn't want to focus on it here.
Get it closer to your face. No, same. No,
I don't know. Anyways, what I have here is a series of steps. And the bottom line is that my better teachers used a lot of small steps to present material, but they didn't necessarily start out that way. For example, teaching the basic hip throw. I'll give you an example. When I teach it, I start out with 3 steps. Step into position, arm around the waist of your opponent, and be sure you bend to throw. Those are the 3 starting out. You mentioned getting below their center of gravity. Well, that's one of the 24 steps that we ultimately cover. So we start out with 3, and they are doing a bunch of things wrong, but they've got the basic concept down. And then from there, we start to integrate the remaining until we have a total of all 24 steps for them to refine their basic hip throw. And yes, one of them includes getting below their center of gravity. So I mentioned that because if I started out with all 24 steps, I would lose them. And
Yeah.
so I start out making things as much as possible simple with 3 steps, whatever I'm teaching. It could be a uki atoshi, it could be a hidari tenagi. It's going to be 3 steps when I first present it, or somewhere in that vicinity. And then we refine. Over time. Has anyone seen the directions for opening a door, passing through, and then closing the door behind you, presented in 42 easy steps? It's hysterical. But sometimes as teachers, we can get carried away with all the nuances and the details too soon. And we alienate students when we do that. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I can't agree more, Dave, with some of those concepts. And I could certainly relate to a lot of the things that Chris was saying. And then when Sensei was talking, I clearly understand what he was articulating to us in response to this question. I don't think in any way, shape, or form that I'm as good or I'm better or even in any way compared to any of the senseis that I've trained under. But I do see differences, and then I try to improve my approach on teaching within myself, for myself. And so I noticed that when I've learned under Sensei Jack, that he does things as Sensei was saying, as Seki would do. He would do it demonstratively, and he'd be like, "Okay, we're going to do this now. Watch." And so for me, as I've gained experience and understand what he's doing now, when I'm in class and he's still doing that or still using that method of teaching, I'm looking at other people in class and they're completely lost. And I'm like, but you're not explaining these things right here. And so I got to a point at some point in time where I would try to break it down. And then I noticed exactly what Dave was just saying. And sometimes I would see other people that would go from a basic concept of a technique to the most advanced. And then again, you would lose that audience because the beginners don't understand what's going on because because you started in a basic concept, but then you went to the most advanced portion of it and they're not ready for the basic part of it yet. And so you've lost them. And so I would start to explain and break it down as Dave was just mentioning. And I think I got a little over the top at some point, because then Sensei George came to me one day and he's like, look, you need to bring that back some. You need to reduce this down to X, right? And stick with that. And so that really stuck with me, to be able to try to find a medium in between. Okay, I don't want to just demonstrate something and expect that somebody understands it, but I want to be able to teach the proper way of applying a technique or performing a technique to where someone understands it at their level, and then move from that spot once I had that concept there. So, just looking at Sensei George and Sensei Jack, two totally different methods of teaching, but me trying to find a happy medium in between there, and the way that I instruct, and that's the way that I do things different.
I think another thing I learned from my students at the junior high was Hari Goshi, how to sweeping hip throw, was initially a very difficult technique for students to learn. And so one day I said, well, you have to be able to balance on your left leg. And so one student said, you mean like a flamingo when they're sleeping? And automatically the whole class's eyes lit up, because it was such a stupid analogy, but it made sense. So I got all 35 kids up and I said, okay, I want you to raise one leg off. I want you to make like a flamingo. And they could do that. And then I said, okay, then I got them in at maybe 10 teams on the mat, not to actually do a throw, but say, okay, I want you to squat down like you do for a hip throw, get the person on your back, make sure they're balanced, move yourself around so they're balanced, and then I want you to raise your right leg off the ground like a flamingo. And it, initially some of them collapsed on the ground, but that's to be expected. And they occasionally they might ask, why did I fall to the ground? I said, well, you weren't balanced. And so they eventually got that concept down, and they call it the flamingo stance. People come up with names for stuff. And they were ultimately able to balance their partner on their back and have one be in the flamingo stance, for lack of a better phrase. And that was a big thrill for them. And then going to the sweeping hip throw from there was just a piece of cake. Because I said, now all you have to do is you're balanced, you're in a position where you can get them onto your back balance, and all you have to do is really kick that right leg back a bit, and you've done a sweep. And it was the sweep became an absolute no-brainer, because they had done all the other steps beforehand. Did it take time? Yes. But I think sometimes, Seki would have never done that. He would demonstrate Hari Goshi sweeping hip throw, and they'd say, okay, do it. And people would do it with some level of success or non-success. And eventually you'd figure out you've got to do all this other stuff to get there. It's kind of like watching not an infant, but what's the next stage after infancy in a human being?
Toddler.
What?
Toddler.
Toddler. It's like walking. Yeah, they're an infant until they learn to start walking, and then they toddle, which is why they're called toddlers. And they don't initially walk. They're sort of running to keep their balance. They haven't learned that if they slow down, they'll be able to walk. And once they're able to walk, then they get dangerous.
Then they start to move furniture.
What?
Then they start to move furniture.
And they start to move furniture. But in any case, it's when I had student teachers, and I had quite a number of those in the classroom, they'd ask me, did my lesson go well? And I said, I can't answer that question for you. You have to look at what your students did. And this is what we all do. We don't, we can teach a fantastic lesson, but the what do you call it? The frosting on the cake is, can they put the frosting on the cake?
Sensei, you're hitting a topic here that's near and dear to my heart. I was meeting with two other teachers yesterday because I'm going to be passing on 40 students in their direction next month. And they were complaining about certain students being less reachable and less enthusiastic. And I said, stop. Look at me. I said, you measure yourself as a teacher, not with what you can do with the enthusiastic student, what you can do with the talented student. You measure yourself as a teacher by how you reach those who are less capable, less interested, less willing. And what can you instill in them? And where can you take them? As a teacher, I watch other teachers sometimes have a student or two that are just naturally talented. And the two teachers, you can see them back there blowing on their fist and rubbing on their chest. And I think that's not the measure of who you are as a teacher. Take the least students that come to you and turn them into people who are enthusiastic about the topic, who excel. You take that, and that's how I want to be measured as a teacher. What can I do with the least? Not what can I do with the most. The most can be self-regulated, self-motivated. The least are the ones that need your teaching acumen, your skill set to reach them. One of my favorite ways to do it is to chide them playfully. I get inside their head by using my cornball humor. Wish I had a good humor skills. I don't. I'm stuck with the cornball skills that, but the long story short is when I reach someone like that and I watch them blossom, it's like, yes, that's what teaching is truly about.
Yeah, I would agree with you. There are students that are hard to reach, and the challenge is to find a way to reach them. And it may just be asking them how they're doing, or if they do something right, complimenting them. Or if there's a slight improvement, compliment them, or some one-on-one instruction, part of the technique where they need some help. Anything, what you're doing is building their self-confidence. And once a person sees they can do something, I've seen students, once you get them to believe in themselves, and I think that's the key, that they're capable, they'll just take off at times.
Sensei, that's very true. I wholeheartedly agree with you. That's the very difference between self-esteem and self-perception. And what you're describing with the great wisdom is you get these students to change how they perceive themselves. It's got nothing to do with self-esteem. That's outward coming in. The self-perception is inward coming out.
Yeah,
how they see themselves, and then how they can present themselves based on that new discovery.
Yeah, I had, and it doesn't always have to be a kind remark. I've had, when I was teaching high school, I had a really tough gangbanger kid in my class, and he was getting a failing with a capital F. And one day he got tired of me, saying, that you do it. He says to me, he says, "Hey, Kirby, why you keep dissing me?" And I just turned at him and I said, well, maybe if you stop dissing yourself, you do better and you do better. And he looked at me it kind of hit him for, I don't know why I reacted that way or why maybe I was just tired of his behavior. But he actually changed his behavior, and he actually he got a decent grade in the class, and he surprised at the end of the semester. I told him, I said, I want to compliment you for getting, he got a C in the class. Yeah, I said, I want to compliment you for getting your grade up.
Sensei, beautiful creativity on your part.
Yeah,
that is so commendable.
Yeah, he said, well, he thanked me. I don't know what he thanked me for, but he thanked me. Maybe it was for telling him to stop dissing himself. Because a lot of a student's success or failure is based upon part of it's their capability, but a large part of it is their perception of themselves. And if we can give them, I'm not a great believer in, I'm doing this for your self-esteem. I don't believe in participant awards.
No.
You were breathing, therefore you got a trophy. But if you can help a student improve their self-image, what they think of themselves, they can do other things. And that's one of your goals. That should be one of your goals as a teacher, regardless of what you're teaching.
You become that one teacher that makes all the difference.
Yeah, I mean,
in all aspects of their life.
I mean, I had I had an English teacher. What grade was it? 11th grade, or was it? Yeah, 11th grade English teacher. We did not get along. That's the only English class I ever got a D in. We disagreed on everything. And that was one of the students that just wouldn't sit back and keep our mouth shut. She was teaching as a hobby. She was independently wealthy, but you had to think it was her way or the highway. And I didn't like her way of thinking. But anyway, I came back after I got my master's degree to see my history teacher, who was still there. And she saw me. She says, "What are you doing now?" I said, "I'm teaching." And she just about died. She says, "Well, who are you here to see?" I said, "Dr. Marshall." I said, "I just want to let him know I got my master's degree." And at that point, she just basically turned and walked away. But I was polite with her, but I figured, I learned two things from that. You never underestimate a student. My parents, I think, jokingly thought I'd grow up to be a gardener. Because I did not do well in high school. But if you get, as you said, Dave, you get one or two teachers who believe in you, and you can do wonders. And maybe that's one of our core responsibilities as a teacher, is to help people improve their self-image. And maybe believing that you can have a better chance of defending yourself can improve your self-confidence.
Sensei, on the flip side of this, I think any one of us here along the way has experienced what I've experienced, and that is there are times, at least twice in my teaching, where I have made a mistake teaching that actually caused the student to quit. And I held myself responsible for that huge mistake. And those are lessons that are hard learned, but well remembered. Major screw ups, totally unintentional. I never saw them coming. But in retrospect, I look back and say, I was an idiot. I should have seen it. I should have known. And so that's the flip side. We work miracles and magic with some, and then others we disenchant by our own oversight or ignorance. And,
yes. And you have. Go ahead.
I know of two circumstances, and I want to think that I'm aware of any others, but there are times when I may have just been that clueless. So there's the flip side of it, what we're talking about here, that has to keep us humble because it happens.
Also, what's very important there is if you do screw up a student, you have to be willing to apologize to them. And that's hard for some teachers, whether it be martial arts or classroom or what have you. It's hard for some, or a boss in a job, it's hard for them to admit they were wrong. But if you can do that, you have a chance of recovering that student or that employee or what have you, that relationship.
At the very least, you're coming clean is a breath of fresh air for everyone.
Yeah, and that's another responsibility as teacher. I mean, I've taught, I've messed up entire classes and had to come back the teacher the next day and say, I'm sorry that what I'm trying to do is not working. Some of you are really confused as to what you're supposed to be doing, and you have to say, okay, let's start over. We have to start over. I've tossed out 6 weeks of work from my students in a classroom situation because I screwed up. Because I start looking at what they're turning in, submitting, their work, and it's just so bad that if it's consistently bad, it has to be my fault. If you're teaching something, whether it be a technique, and even in your martial art, and everyone is consistently doing it wrong, you need to take, as we I think said earlier, we need to take a step back and say, what am I doing that's messing up my students? Because that's not our goal.
He's not starting out.
And it doesn't matter how experienced you get, we still make mistakes. That's part of life, I think. So let's move on here a bit. Have you, when you were promoted to black belt under your sensei's criteria, have any of you changed that criteria for your students? Just generally, not if a person is handicapped or has some other particular issue, but just generally, have you changed the standards under which you were promoted for your own black belts?
I added more striking techniques. Then I tested using the Jujitsu curriculum, and I very intentionally did it. I felt it brought balance. I was looking for that to be a more integral part. One of the beautiful things about strikes, even if they're not injurious, is they buy time. They buy time to go to the next joint lock or the next throw or the next trip or the next strike. Put two back to back so that you buy perhaps even more time to get to that next technique. So I very intentionally added more striking.
Darren, you're being very quiet. It's time.
I felt like I said a lot today.
Very quiet today.
I'll add to Dave's comment, though. How about that?
Darren knows everything he knows. Plus, he knows what we know. That's why he's so quiet and makes him wiser than any of us.
I'm gonna add to Dave's comment. I think what Dave was saying to us was, in addition to adding some things to his curriculum, his program, I think he was just trying to make the entire curriculum evolve. You have to be able to change from what it was to what it is and how practical it may or may not have been at some point in time. And things are different now. They're more dynamic, they're more aggressive, they're more everything, right? And so if you stay within the same dynamics of what you've learned in the past, and as time has gone along, things do evolve. Everything evolves, people evolve, and that includes our technique and our ability to perform them, and certainly have the opportunity to execute. And so doing the things that Dave says, I think, is a part of evolution in trying to make what we do effective. So there you go.
Okay. The
Carlos, you muted.
student black belt handbooks, student handbook grew out of me trying to. Seki did not have any requirements anywhere. He would just once every month or so he'd line everyone out and say, "You're a green belt, you're a purple belt, you're a brown belt, you're you know." I have no idea how he made that distinction, other than he saw something in each person that made him worth that particular rank. Unless he was keeping a careful eye over those people who he felt were succeeding. And that's how he based out promotions. For black belt, he needed someone to replace the sensei at the Burbank YMCA. So he came up to Bill Fromm and I. We were both first Q one night and said, "Both of you are taking over the Burbank YMCA." We said, "We're not black belts." He says, "You are now." I don't think Americans can function under that kind of, how do you say, what do you want to call it?
System.
Because it can be interpreted as being extremely subjective and unfair. And so when I started wanting to do the classes with LA City Schools, I had to come up with a curriculum. I came up with the belt curriculum for Budoshin grades, and those Budoshin requirements have been upgraded, changed maybe 3 or 4 times over the years. I had a black belt, and I had promoted him to 2nd degree, and he says, "What's the criteria for 3rd?" And he ultimately left me because I did not have any 3rd belt criteria. It was just, well, if I see you doing a good job as a sandan, at some point you'll get to, as nidan, at some point you get to sandan. I was trying to use Seki's philosophy. And this was a black belt I really respected. And so the black belt handbook evolved out of that loss of that student. The only thing I don't like about the black belt handbook right now is that it's so detailed. And some people look at the black belt handbook, they run the other way. And one of the things that, having a conversation with one of our black belts locally, he says, the one question you're missing off the 10 questions that a candidate for black belt has to answer, and there are no wrong answers. It's, are you willing to teach either in someone else's, within this dojo, or on your own? Because according to Seki, in my thinking, ideally, your black belt grades are your teaching grades. And if you're not going to teach, you don't need a black belt. And most of my black belts have not gone into teaching. For some of them, it was just on their bucket list to get a black belt, then it was bye-bye. And others just, they stuck around for a while, and then they got injuries, or they had to move due to a job, or something of that sort, and or other priorities in their life. And so they didn't go into teaching. If I had my ideal, there would be Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu dojos at every YMCA in the country, or every park department in the country, but that's not the reality. So yes, I've changed the belt rank requirements, and I'm probably at some point next year going to have to take a serious look at the black belt handbook, because in my mind, although it is extremely detailed, which some people like, it's also, some people look at it and literally run the other way. because they see something with so much detail and they say, I can't do this. But if they read it, they'd realize they could. Darren, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I'll say something. Look, I understand all aspects of what you're saying there. I think that in teaching there has to be some sort of a understanding between, especially for new students, of what the expectation is to be able to move on. That's the American in everybody, right? If we're teaching in the continental US, right? Americans just have to have some sense of advancement. They need to show progression,
Right.
whatever they're doing. Otherwise, they lose interest or they feel like they're not getting somewhere. And
Yeah,
so,
excellent. Thank you.
you have to have that. In other cultures, it's different, right? And it's expected that you are different and having, you don't ask those questions. But as Americans, we do expect that. And so, if you don't have that within your curriculum, then you have people that do lose interest. And so, yeah, we have the same thing. There is minimum time requirements that you need to be able to achieve, to be eligible, to be considered to move to the next level. Is it just the time requirements? No. Well, it's, not only the time requirements, but then you have to have understandings of certain techniques or, pieces or understanding or formalities or lineage or history or whatever it might be for the curriculum that you're teaching. And so when it comes down to where if you just take the bare minimum that makes somebody eligible for promotion, does that mean that they're promoted? And then again, as Americans, and constantly in a dojo, especially with people that haven't made it to an intermediate and certainly an advanced level, and even sometimes advanced, they're like, okay, I'm eligible for promotion. And then there's the conversations that have to happen. And so for me, I like to say I hold the line selfishly. And so I have to explain that to people when they ask that, when they're presenting me to like, hey, I'm eligible for promotion. Is it time? Well, then right there, I'm like, well, you've asked the question and you should be able to answer it because you've asked that question. And at this level, you should understand that if you are asking that question, then obviously you're not ready. And so you should never be asking me. Then I have to break it down.
That is beautiful. Yes. Yes. Don't ask for promotion.
Right. And so I break it down, and then they're like, well, don't you think you should be promoted? And I'm like, I don't know. And I certainly never would ask, and if somebody felt like then I was eligible for promotion, then they would tell me at that time and we'd go from there. But, right now I'm right here. And so getting back to the selfish piece is I like to say, look, if you've made these minimum time requirements to be eligible, but you've missed these things, or you're not doing these things, or you need some work in this area. And if I was to consider you for promotion because you've made the bare minimum in making yourself eligible to be considered for promotion, then I would literally cheat myself. And I'm saying that's what I say the selfish part is, because I'm saying I'm cheating myself, which means I'm holding the line for every other person that has come before you. If I compromise the curriculum for you because you feel like you've met the bare minimum, how does that make everyone else feel? And then I get into a deeper conversation with them, and I try to relate to how people would understand what I'm trying to say. And I like this analogy. I feel like it's really good. And I feel like every time I've talked about it, people really understand it. There's things in life that people achieve. And the most common thing right now is, let's say, combat sports and somebody winning a world championship. When you see those individuals win a world championship, they're over the top in excitement. And then I use the Olympics as well. Like if you are representing your country in the Olympics and you win a gold medal, you can see how excited and sometimes emotional that they are winning those things, right, in the championship. But when you've put your life commitment into something like martial arts, And it's time for you to move to the next level that someone else recognizes and they award you with that. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming emotionally. And to me, that's a clear demonstration in understanding that you're relating to what someone is recognized in you. And so because of that, it's overwhelming emotionally. Like most people break down over that emotionally. And that's felt internally. It's not just something that they were awarded because they won a competition such as a world championship, right? This is something much, much deeper. It's ingrained in an individual. And so not holding the line on when someone is truly eligible to be promoted is selfish within myself, because it cheats everyone else that has been there, that has felt that emotion, that has experienced that feeling of what someone else has recognized in an individual, to move on.
Darren, I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. One of the things Sensei Kirby taught me that I use in teaching is the concept of pre-testing. I've never had a student ask me for a promotion. I think they just know that would be out of line. I never said they can't, but they don't. And I've never had a student ask me if they can test. They'll ask me, Sensei, can I pre-test? And I say, sure. Anytime you want to pre-test, we'll pre-test, because what we're going to do is point out where the work needs to be done. And they know they're not ready to test until they can pre-test. So that's a great way for them to say, I'm interested in advancing. I want to find out what I still need to work on. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Just this week, this whole concept of advancement, a 6th degree and the AJA was asking to be promoted and had spent the time in grade and had done minimal amount of participation, and is running a successful dojo. So on the surface, everything's been met. But we had a discussion on changing and taking a fresh look at the promotional requirements for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th degree black belt. And one of the things I contributed, I actually wrote it out because I felt it strong enough and it was worth sharing. What I wrote, and I wrote this just 4 days ago, is personally, while promotion and rank undeniably feel good, they do not directly impact what I have done, am doing, and will do as a jujitsuka. The experience of learning from others and learning from teaching others is what keeps me inspired. The rest is just gravy and side dishes. No need for agreement or disagreement here, just saying what's so for me. I'm gonna tell you right now, I know in my heart, if I were still shodan, I would still be doing what I'm doing. And I don't say that humbly, I don't say it proudly, I just say it observationally. Rank is rank, but doing is doing, and learning is learning, and teaching is intensified learning. May it ever be thus.
One, I gotta write that down, but just bear with me for a second. What
I was trying to say something earlier while Daryl was speaking. I just want to be brief when it comes to the discussion. We are speaking about ranking, promotion, considering the curriculum program. My first thoughts within the discussion, it had to do with the treatment modality. What topics are you teaching? Whether you are teaching English, history, and they got to be some type of awareness of how we approach these modality and expectations for the students. I know that for me, when it comes to promotion and rank, whether it's here in the United States or whether I'm coming from any part of the world, if an individual personal accomplishment and achievement that I am trying to acquire about myself, whether it has something to do about me feeling better, good, whatsoever. And there is a lot of elements that need to be considered when it comes to that, because like you were saying, there are it's a constant evolution. We're moving ahead, just like the technology. Otherwise, we stay stuck and we become a dinosaur.
One thing I wanted to react to what Dave Clark said in terms of pre-testing. I will, if I feel a student is ready for promotion, and they don't, I will ask you, well, would you like to pre-test just for the heck of it, and we'll see how you do. And if there, as Dave Clark, if there are things that need to be fixed, we can then concentrate on those, And usually what I found, is because, again, I think in all the years of teaching, I've only had one student who felt he belonged at a higher rank. And, that was it. But usually I will ask a student, would you like to test at the end of this session? Or, I'm looking at you for, I'll let them know I'm looking at them, and sometimes it encourages them to up their game, so to speak. Or they may say, I don't think I'm ready. And I'll say, well, why don't we just pre-test, see how you do? You have nothing to lose. And I don't say you might make it. I say, and surprising number of times, I won't ask a student to pre-test unless I'm pretty sure they can pass. And then they pass, and it's a big surprise for them. I can make it look like it's hey, you made it, and it impresses them that, that I had the confidence in them that they could make it, and hopefully it'll improve their own self-confidence. But,
so Sensei, when every person here, we've all said this as well through multiple workshops, right? When anyone identifies an individual for promotion, we already know that person is ready to go to the next level. It's just a formality, right? And so What are we doing at that point in time? We're not challenging their physical ability. We're really challenging their mental capacity to be able to perform in front of the audience that's going to be observing them, right?
Right.
But we already know the answers.
Right. The purpose of a test is to show others what you know. That's all a test does. Go back to the teacher. When I was a teacher for a while in California, you can get your administrative credential, which means you'd be a school principal or stuff like that, by testing. And there was a class, it was a 6-hour class, and they said they spent 5.5 of those hours on how you had to think to answer the questions, because they're all essay type responses. It was, you had to have a certain mindset. And the other half hour was, get one of these books and read it. And this company had like an 80 or 90% pass rate. First time a teacher, you had to be a teacher for 5 years, yada, yada, yada. So I said, okay, I'll take it, and I took it. I passed the state test, got the credential, never used it. My wife simply used my notes from the class on how to think. She read the same book I did. She took the test. She passed. She never used it. But the point is, if you know what the criteria are, and it's like who says the mindset? Darren. There's a mindset we all have. We know what we're looking for in a student for that next promotion. And yes, part of it is physical skill. The other part of it is their emotional shape, and part of it is technically what they know. And those are the things we're looking for. And I think if all five of us wrote down what things we're looking for in a student for a promotion, we would probably come up with some things pretty much in common, and we would probably also come up with some things that are different or that we hadn't thought about, but actually they're part of our criteria. So we usually know if a student's ready for a promotion, but we don't go. We go to the test because it helps them prove that they are ready for the promotion. And it shows other students in the class that they are ready for promotion, because in America, we do things by testing, not by saying, okay, Darren, you're green belt, Dave, you're purple belt, Thomas, you're brown belt, Carlos, you're going to be a brown belt with a blue stripe, which would be first cue. Okay. We don't do that because then all of you are wondering, what criteria did I meet? So it's, I think it's just I actually think the formalized testing is more of an American thing than anything else. I don't know if it's gone back to Japan, but
Sensei, when you got a student who's spent 5 hours sharpening their axe, the least you can do is give them an hour to cut down some trees.
if you do what?
If you've got a student who's spent 5 hours sharpening their axe right in front of you, the least you can do is let them cut down some trees.
Shouldn't it be chop down some trees?
Oh, I suppose.
Sorry about that.
If the axe is sharp enough, they're going to cut it with one swing.
There you go. Yes. Or it's a sapling.
Making sure that the axe is pretty sharp, so you can keep cutting.
Right. Oh, well. There's an axiom in there somewhere, but
when conversations go to the sublime, we're just about done.
Yes, I think that's a good thing to end on. So, maybe the ending phrase is, we promote our students when their axes are sharp enough. So maybe that's a good place to stop at. Okay. So anyway, I think this is the only meeting this month because the next one is gets too close to the holidays and everybody's doing everything else but. So if I don't hear or see you again before the holidays, wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever, Feliz Navidad, whatever else is going on. And we'll see you. I think our next meeting will be January 4th. And then we'll be going back to 2 times a month. I hope to get this Zoom meeting out a little earlier in the week than last time. I had to get some technical assistance from who got the company that does the software for me. But I finally had to get to a technician who could explain things in English. And they wrote really simply, they were able to follow the steps and get some semblance of quality back to the opening of the videos. So in any case, anyway, so things should go quicker this time. So in any event, I hope you have a great weekend. I hope wherever you are, the weather is not too horrible. We're not looking for any more earthquakes this year. I know in the Northeast, nobody wants any more rain or snow. How are you? How's the weather back there, Thomas?
It's actually, last night was the coldest night we've had. It was 22 degrees, but it's going to be 67 tomorrow.
Well, you can go out in your t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah, we watch the kids out in the cul-de-sac, and it's about freezing, and they're out in shorts and t-shirts.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You get acclimated to.
Yeah, and they got much better metabolism.
Yeah, I know when I used to go backpacking, and for us, 60, if you're back at 60 degrees is warm if you're out there backpacking, and we'd be in t-shirt and shorts just because that's the way, and it wasn't cold.
Yeah.
So you stopped moving. So anyway.
35 in Louisiana is unbearable, Sensei. I'm just saying. 35.
35 in Louisiana? Oh.
If you're in Louisiana and it's 35 degrees, look, I respect all cold. Like anything below 70 degrees for me is cold. So,
Yes.
but when you're in Louisiana, it's humid and damp and to the bone.
Exactly. The humidity. When you have a dry cold, you can withstand 22 degrees. When you have a wet cold, 40 degrees will chill you to the bone.
Yes.
Yeah. Dave knows, he's in Tampa. He knows the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep the axe out of the water, keep it sharp.
Wish you all a happy Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year 2025. It was definitely a great discussion today. And you have my permission. You can eat all you want. But remember, you got to stay in shape.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Take care.
Okay. Take care.
Happy holidays, everyone.